Also new, the Washington Post reports President Trump is discussing with his advisors the possibility of using a recess appointment to plug in a new attorney general should Sessions step down. The thinking is because lawmakers would be on vacation, there would be no messy Senate confirmation. Now, let's hear from Jeff Sessions speaking to Tucker Carlson just a short time ago.
You've seen the president's criticism of you. Do you think it's fair?
Well, it's kind of hurtful, but the President of the United States is a strong leader. He is determined to move this country in the direction he believes it needs to go to make us great again. And he has had a lot of criticisms, and he's steadfastly determined to get his job done, and he wants all of us to do our jobs, and that's what I intend to do.
It's kind of hurtful, but says he will continue to do his job as long as the president wants him to. In other words, Mr. President, if you want to fire him, you can fire him, as the senator from South Carolina, Lindsey Graham, put it. You can fire him if you want to, but it sounds as if he's not going anywhere. The Washington Post cites officials who say the president is just mulling all of this over, a recess appointment and the rest, and that there is no plan in place. In response to the Post reporting, the White House said, and I quote, "More fake news from the Amazon Washington Post." Of course, Amazon's chief, Jeff Bezos, owns the Post, or I should say Bezos, and the White House moments ago said, once again, the recess reporting is, quote, fake news. The reason you're here today is to talk about Jeff Sessions in an article in the Post this morning about the Washington Post, which I believe the White House just called fake news.
As normal, yes.
Yeah. But the idea here is that the president clearly wants Jeff Sessions gone. You don't beat up a cabinet member every day in the way that he has if you don't.
Right.
But it doesn't appear he wants to fire him because he hasn't fired him.
Right.
And you sort of give some reasons for that.
Yeah, I mean, it's hard to know exactly what's happening here, and obviously the business of predicting what Donald Trump is doing has proven to be difficult. But here, there's probably one of two things at play. Either Donald Trump simply doesn't want to have to be the one to pull the trigger. He has at times been averse to actually firing people. We've seen him dispatch others to do these sorts of things in the past. Or it's possible that he recognizes that by firing Sessions, he actually limits his ability to replace Sessions. There is a law called the Vacancies Act. If Donald Trump accepts Jeff Sessions' resignation, Trump could theoretically move anyone else who's been Senate confirmed into that spot. So he could bring...
The paper uses Rick Perry as an example.
Exactly. So Rick Perry could be moved from the Department of Energy to be the acting attorney general, where he could, if Trump wanted, potentially try and fire Robert Mueller, the special counsel. However, the law says that that happens in case of resignations or inability to perform duties. It doesn't specify if that applies if he is fired. So it's unclear that if Donald Trump were to fire Sessions, try and use that rule, it would probably be challenged in the courts.
It sounds like it would be challenged from within his own party to hear from Lindsey Graham and many others who've come out today. It's not hard to find them.
That's right.
The idea is he wants the Russia thing ended, and he can't end it with Robert Mueller still there. Had Sessions not recused himself, then Sessions would be in charge. We wouldn't be in this position. But really, Mueller works, I believe, technically, for Rosenstein, the deputy, right?
That's exactly right. Because Sessions recused himself, and there are a lot of reasons Sessions recused himself. We should be very clear about that it is not simply about these meetings that he didn't report to the Senate. There are a lot of other issues there. But so because he recused himself, it came to Rosenstein. Rosenstein appointed this special counsel. And so now Rosenstein has ownership over that. And if someone else came into the Attorney General's office, there could be some tension if Rosenstein didn't feel as though that person should take over the ownership of the Mueller investigation. That, too, is sort of a black box.
But there has to be a resignation, and from everything we're hearing, we just heard from Jeff Sessions a moment ago talking to Tucker Carlson. He didn't sound like a man who's considering resignation. He sounds like a man who, he said it was a bit hurtful. Insiders close to him say he's angry.
Right. Yeah, and which I think is totally fair. I mean, it's pretty clear Sessions likes the role that he's in. He's doing a lot of the things that he has talked about for years, even as a senator. He wants to stay in that position. And I think he recognizes, too, that Donald Trump has his hands tied, that Donald Trump clearly doesn't want to fire him, or he would fire him, which would be a fairly unique thing. I mean, Truman fired his attorney general for different reasons, but it's not something that happens very often. So it would be a big step by Trump. It's clear that Sessions has taken advantage of that.
Is this untenable, this current predicament? I mean, to hear it from White House insiders, it is. You can't have a president hating his attorney general, hating on his attorney general in this way.
Well, one has to wonder, too, what the mood is like inside the Department of Justice. I mean, you have this boss that has just come in, you're getting to know him, and all of a sudden the president is bad-mouthing him all the time. It seems like right now we're sort of on this glide path toward a détente, where Donald Trump doesn't like Jeff Sessions, can't do much about it, isn't going to do much about it. But this all depends on the Russia investigation. Clearly, it's under Donald Trump's skin. Clearly, he wants to do something about it. If something else spikes with the Russia investigation, who knows how that changes their dynamic.
He knows a lot more about this investigation than we do.
That's very true.
Donald Trump knows a lot more about this investigation than we do. And every time something like this comes up, you wonder, what did he just learn?
That's very true. There's some speculation when he first started going after Jeff Sessions that perhaps he had asked Sessions to try and intervene somehow in the Russia investigation. Sessions said no. A lot of these rules that are in place in terms of how Robert Mueller is fired, when Jeff Sessions can recuse himself, these are sort of guidelines as opposed to rules. And so there's a lot of interpretation comes into play. And so there's a lot of nuance. And so if Donald Trump really wanted to force Jeff Sessions to do a particular thing or to do it himself, he could do it, and it would have to come down to what the court said about it, right? So there's all this nuance, which I think makes this trickier simply because there are a lot of options at play depending on how much risk Trump wants to take.
Yep.